Hey, folks, welcome to another live. Um, Cholesterol is a scam. Now, today I wanted to talk about a meeting I had today with a client, and she was concerned about two things, right? The first thing she was concerned about was her blood pressure, her high blood pressure. The second thing she was concerned about was her quote unquote cholesterol. She was on statin medication for that cholesterol, right? Nothing to say about that right now, at least. But she put me in a very difficult position because she was like, I mean, I know I've done it a million times. I can guarantee you that with a couple of interventions, we can normalize her blood pressure and in coordination with her doctors and so on, get her off her blood pressure medications. No problem. Easy. I've done it a million times, right? The hard thing is when I do that, we're almost guaranteed that the LDL cholesterol, LDL is not cholesterol, but the LDL will go up. Almost guaranteed, right? So in that context, what am I supposed to tell such a person? Like what can I tell you? I can say, I know how to fix the real problem and we can talk about the root causes and so on. But often they don't want to talk about root causes. They just want to talk about, do I need to take, how can I stop taking this cholesterol medicine, right? Which is something that technically I'm not allowed to consult on. I'm not a doctor, right? However, what I can say is that based on all the data, if you take your cholesterol medicine, you might live a little bit longer, but it's not very statistically significant, right? It's like 2 to 4 days longer. Number one. Number two, when we do anything good, I think it was Dr. Nader Ali, who from Texas, who has a video where he points out that when you do anything good, and by good we mean good for health. If you start running, if you start lifting weights, if you start bicycling, if you start fasting, just start eating less, your LDL cholesterol, we'll define these terms in just a second, your LDL will go up, and sometimes it'll go up significantly, right? So, and that's to be expected, right? And everyone knows that. The problem is that when you see that, then you stop doing the good thing and you start doing the bad things. Because when you do bad things, your LDL goes down, right? Or can go down. That's often the associations. So let's define our terms here. LDL is not cholesterol. LDL is a lipoprotein. There's only one molecule called cholesterol. It is vital for life. Without cholesterol, none of us would be alive, okay? There is cholesterol in the cell membrane in every single one of your cells in your body right now. It is extremely vital for life. It is so vital for life that your brain makes its own cholesterol. And the statins that are known to cause dementia or known to increase dementia symptoms are the ones that can pass the blood-brain barrier and affect cholesterol synthesis in the brain. Okay, so this is all stuff that, and I've written about this in detail for years now. I don't know how long do we have to keep having this discussion, but this is all very well known. Now, when you have cholesterol is a fat-soluble molecule, and therefore it has to be transported around the body through lipoproteins. Lipoprotein is exactly what it says. It is a protein on the outside with a lipid, a fat molecule on the inside, or fat molecules on the inside. Okay, those are lipoproteins. You have low density lipoproteins, and you have intermediate density lipoproteins, and you have high density lipoproteins, and you also have very low density lipoproteins. Okay, again, I've written essays on this stuff. You can check out my blog for all the details. But my point is just this: as long as we're concerned about quote unquote cholesterol, as long as we're concerned about LDL, we're never going to be able to do the right things. Because whenever you do anything to heal, see, LDL is also part of the immune system. This is also well known, well documented. When you're having an immune response, when you're cleaning your diet up, when you're no longer eating the junk food and your body can actually heal, can actually repair itself, LDL is going to increase because there's more repair work to be done. For those of us who are vegan for a long period of time, like myself, when I finally got on a human appropriate diet, my LDL shot up. Why did my LDL shoot up? Well, there are a couple reasons why it might have shot up. But one reason is because I just had done so much damage to my body as a vegan for all those years. My immune system had to kick in. My immune system had to save me from the junk I was eating, right? And now my LDL is not as high. It's still high, but it's not as high as it used to be because I've gotten over the period of repairing. Okay, so listen, you guys, you decide what you want to do. I can't tell anyone what to do, but if you continue to obsess about LDL, you are never going to make progress. You're always going to live in confusion, right? Once you understand that it is the blood sugar that is the real problem, once you understand that it is the visceral fat that is the real problem, right? Once you understand that getting rid of those things means going on a very low carb or a zero carb or at least a low carb diet, low carb meaning 100 grams of carbohydrates or less, excuse me. Shout out to Anup Singh, the guy who sort of invented the 100 grams or less per day protocol. Anup Singh, I've had some interviews with him on YouTube. Check those out. if you're somewhere in that world, somewhere in the world from low carb to no carb, that's how you're actually going to make progress in this. That's how things are going to improve. And I don't care what happens to your LDL because it's not clinically relevant. Okay. I care what happens to your blood sugar. I care what happens to your triglycerides. I care what happens to visceral fat. And I do care what happens to CAC, to your coronary artery calcium score. And if you have money, hey, CCTA as well, coronary CT angiogram, right? If you want to do those tests and measure the actual what's going on in the blood vessels, by all means you can. There's nothing wrong with that. But is it necessary? I would argue it's probably not necessary 9 times out of 10. Okay. And if you're worried about heart disease, then yeah, get those carbs way down. And if you want to supplement with something like K2 and D3, these have been shown to have a really positive impact on the plaquing in the arteries. In fact, I was listening to an interview. I got permission from Dave Mack to sample one of his interviews. He had a really interesting interview with a registered nurse who had been on something like a low carb diet for about 40 years, I want to say, or at least 20 years. And what she said was, it's a really interesting interview. I'm going to sample it in a little bit more detail. But what she said was, they were so concerned about the cholesterol, but I had so many other things going on. And when I fixed everything without the statins, they didn't believe it, right? And then that was the doctor who didn't believe it. 10 years later, he ends up in the hospital because he had sky high trigs. He was eating all the carbs and he was taking a statin as well. He couldn't save himself from a heart attack, right? Or from other damage. So anyway, these are all anecdotes. You can accept them or not, but they're anecdotes that are based in a proper scientific understanding of what is happening in the context of high blood pressure, metabolic dysfunction, and so on. And what I'm telling you again and again is that it's not the fat, it's not the cholesterol, it's the carbohydrates. Keep it simple. Eat a human appropriate diet. Get rid of the plants to the extent that you can, and eat more meat. And we will see you in the next video.